I was 12 years old when my father dropped me off at the homeless shelter on Christmas Eve. The memory of that night is burned into my mind with such clarity that even now, decades later, I can still feel the cold vinyl of his car's seat beneath my legs, still smell the pine air freshener hanging from his rearview mirror, still hear the slight squeak of the windshield wipers as they pushed away the falling snow. We weren't homeless. That's what made it so much worse. We had a house. Well, he had a house. A beautiful 3-bedroom colonial in a neighborhood where people hung wreaths on their doors and strung lights along their gutters, where families gathered around dinner tables and kids had their own rooms with posters on the walls and shelves full of books and toys. But his new wife, Rebecca, didn't want me in her perfect house. She'd made that abundantly clear over the 6 months since the wedding. The drive to the shelter felt endless, yet somehow far too short. Christmas music played softly on the radio, Bing Crosby crooning about white Christmases and being home for the holidays. Every cheerful note about family and togetherness made my stomach twist into tighter knots. I kept my face turned toward the window, watching the decorated houses blur past, each one a reminder of what I was losing. I kept stealing glances at my father's profile, searching desperately for any sign that he'd change his mind. His jaw was set, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. Maybe this was just meant to scare me straight, I told myself. Maybe he'd circle the block and take me home, tell me it was a lesson about gratitude or behavior or whatever excuse would let us both pretend this hadn't happened. But then we pulled up to this gray, weathered building with chipped paint and bars on the windows. People huddled outside in the bitter cold, their breath forming clouds in the December air. Some were smoking cigarettes down to the filter. Others just stood there, staring at nothing, their eyes hollow in a way that terrified me. My father put the car in park, but left the engine running. The heater was still blowing, but I felt cold all the way through to my bones. "This is temporary," he said, still not meeting my eyes. His hands gripped the steering wheel like he was afraid to let go. "Just until Rebecca adjusts to you living with us. She's pregnant, Michael. It's a difficult time. She needs space to prepare for the baby." I wanted to scream that I'd been there first, that I was his son too, that I'd lived with him for 12 years before she'd even existed in our lives. But the words stuck in my throat, thick and choking. "How long?" I managed to whisper. "A few weeks, maybe a month. We'll figure it out." I believed him. God help me, I actually believed him. Even when he popped the trunk and handed me a garbage bag, a black trash bag, stuffed with my clothes instead of a proper suitcase. Even when he pressed 2 $20 bills into my hand and told me to be good and follow the rules. Even when he drove away without looking back, his taillights disappearing into the snowy night like dying embers. I stood on that sidewalk, clutching my garbage bag, and watched until I couldn't see his car anymore. Then I watched the empty street for another 10 minutes, certain he'd come back, certain this was all a mistake. A woman with kind eyes and tired features eventually came outside. Her name tag read Angela, night supervisor. "You must be Michael," she said gently. "Your father called ahead. Come on inside, honey. It's freezing out here." The shelter smelled like industrial cleaner and overcooked vegetables. The main room had rows of cots, most already occupied by people of all ages. Some were families huddled together. Others were alone, their faces turned toward the walls. A small, sad Christmas tree stood in the corner, decorated with paper chains and popcorn strings that had seen better days. Angela showed me to a cot in the youth section, separated from the adults by a partition that didn't actually provide any privacy. "Lights out is at 9, she explained. "Breakfast is at 7. There are rules posted on the wall. Follow them, and you'll be fine. Do you have any questions?" I had a million questions. Why was this happening? When was my dad coming back? What had I done wrong? But I just shook my head. That first night, I didn't sleep. I lay on that thin mattress, staring at the water-stained ceiling tiles, listening to the sounds of strangers coughing and snoring and crying. Somewhere, a baby wailed. Someone else was arguing in harsh whispers. I thought about my room at home, my real home, the apartment where my dad and I had lived before Rebecca. It had been small, but it was ours. I'd had my own bed with a blue comforter covered in planets and stars. My books had lined a shelf my dad built himself. We'd eat dinner together every night, even if it was just mac and cheese or frozen pizza. He'd help me with homework. We'd watch TV together, arguing good-naturedly about which shows to watch. When had that stopped being enough for him? For 3 weeks, I told everyone at the shelter that my dad was coming back. I'd sit by the front window during visiting hours, which were from 1 to 4 every afternoon, watching every car that passed. My heart would leap every time I saw a vehicle that looked like his, a silver Honda Accord. But it was never him. Still waiting, Angela would ask gently, and I'd nod, not trusting my voice. Week 4 came and went. Then month 2. I called a cell phone every single day from the shelter's payphone, feeding in quarters I'd saved for my meal allowance. Each time, it would ring and ring before go to voicemail. Hi, you've reached Dave Torres. Leave a message. His voice sounded so normal, so casual, like he was just busy and would call back soon. I left messages at first. Dad, it's me. I'm still at the shelter. When are you coming? Please call me back. Then, as the weeks passed, Dad, please. I miss you. I'll be better, I promise. Just come get me. And finally, desperately, Dad, it's Christmas again. Please don't leave me here. Then one day in March, the number was disconnected. A robotic voice informed me that the number I dialed was no longer in service. He'd changed his number. He'd cut the last thread connecting us. I stood in that hallway with the dead phone pressed to my ear, quarters scattered at my feet where I dropped them, and something inside me cracked. Rebecca had given birth to their son. I found out through Facebook on the shelter's shared computer, the one in the common room that we were allowed to use for an hour a day. Someone had tagged my father in the announcement. Dave and Rebecca Torres are thrilled to announce the arrival of Marcus David Torres, born February 14th, 7 pounds 3 ounces. Our first child has arrived, and our hearts are overflowing with love. Our first child, like I'd never existed, like 12 years of my life. My birth, my first steps, my first day of school, every birthday and holiday, and ordinary Tuesday, had been erased with the birth of a replacement. A do-over son for his do-over life. I stared at the photo of my father holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a blue blanket. He was smiling wider than I'd ever seen him smile. Rebecca stood beside him, glowing with that new mother radiance everyone talks about. They looked like a magazine ad for perfect families. The comments were full of congratulations. He's beautiful. So happy for you guys. First of many, I hope. I wanted to comment. I wanted to write, what about me? I'm your son too. I'm right here. I've been waiting, but my hands were shaking too hard to type. On my 13th birthday, April 3rd, I sat by the shelter entrance from dawn until midnight. I convinced myself that surely he wouldn't forget my birthday. Even if he needed space, even if Rebecca had needed time, he wouldn't forget the day I was born. I'd made myself a promise. If he came, I wouldn't even be angry. I'd just be grateful. I'd get in the car and never complain about Rebecca again. I'd be invisible if that's what they needed. I'd be perfect. The shelter staff tried to make it special. Angela baked a small cake, chocolate with vanilla frosting, my favorite. The other kids sang happy birthday with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Someone gave me a used book they'd found at Goodwill. Everyone was trying to be kind, but I barely heard them. My eyes were fixed on the door on the parking lot beyond, waiting for a silver Honda Accord that never came. At midnight, when Angela gently told me I needed to get some sleep, I finally accepted the truth. Nothing, not even a card, not even a text message to the shelter's main number that he could have easily found online. I was 13 years old, and my father had forgotten I existed. Child services got involved after that. They'd been monitoring my case, and it was clear my father wasn't coming back. A social worker named Patricia, with short gray hair and a briefcase covered in stickers, tried to explain my options. We're gonna find you a good foster home, Michael. A real family who will take care of you. They tried placing me in foster homes. The first family lived in a suburb 40 minutes away. They were nice enough. Mr. and Mrs. Patterson, both teachers with 2 biological kids and 1 other foster child. They had a spare room with a twin bed and a desk. They made pot roast for dinner and asked about my day at school. But I couldn't stay. What if my dad came looking for me at the shelter and I wasn't there? What if he finally remembered he had a son and went to the only place he knew to find me? I ran away after 3 days, hitchhiking back to the shelter. Patricia was furious, but Angela just sighed and let me in. They tried again and again for different foster placements over 6 months. Each time, I ran back to the shelter. I became known as a runner, a problem case. The family stopped wanting to take me in. You're sabotaging yourself, Patricia said, exasperated. Your father isn't coming back, Michael. You need to accept that and move forward. But I couldn't. Not yet. It took 8 long months before reality finally crashed down on me with the weight of absolute certainty. 8 months of waiting, hoping, making excuses in my mind. Maybe he was sick. Maybe Rebecca was keeping him away. Maybe he'd lost my information and couldn't find me. Then I saw them at the grocery store. I'd been sent with a shelter staff member to help carry supplies. We were in the cereal aisle when I heard a laugh I'd know anywhere. My father's laugh, the one he used to make when I told him a joke or did something silly. I turned, and there they were. My father pushing a cart with baby Marcus strapped into the seat, Rebecca walking beside him, her hand on his arm. They looked happy, relaxed, like a family out doing their weekly shopping without a care in the world. I froze. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. This was it. He'd see me, and everything would be be okay. He'd apologize, explain, and take me home. I stepped forward. Dad. He looked up. Our eyes met. For a brief, horrible moment, I saw a recognition flash across his face. He knew exactly who I was. Then he looked away, turned his car down another aisle, kept walking. Rebecca had glanced at me with mild curiosity, like I was just another stranger in the store. She didn't even know what I looked like. Dad. I called louder, starting to follow. The staff member, a young guy named Tom, caught my arm. Michael, don't. That's my dad. That's him. I know, buddy. I know. But don't do this to yourself. I watched them disappear around the corner. Heard Marcus babble something in baby speak. Heard my father's voice respond with such tenderness. That's right, big guy. We're gonna get you some bananas. That's when I stopped being a kid and started surviving. Something hardened in me that day. The part of me that had been waiting, hoping, believing in fairy tale reunions. It died in that grocery store between the cereal and the canned goods. What grew in its place was something colder, sharper, more determined. He'd throw me away like trash and started over with a clean slate. Fine. I'd show him exactly what he'd thrown away. I stopped running from foster placements. Let Patricia place me with an older couple, the Hendersons, who mostly left me alone. They were in it for the monthly check, which was fine by me. I had a bed, a roof, and they didn't ask questions. I threw myself into survival mode. School became my escape and my weapon. I'd always been a decent student, but now I became exceptional. Straight A's weren't enough. I needed perfect scores. I needed to be undeniable, but grades alone wouldn't be enough. I needed resources. I learned which restaurants threw out fresh food at closing time. The Italian place on 5th Street tossed perfectly good bread and pasta every night at 9. The bagel shop dumped day-old bagels that were still delicious. The grocery store had a dumpster out back where they threw away produce with minor blemishes. Brown bananas perfect for smoothies, slightly wilted lettuce, still good for sandwiches. I learned which libraries let you stay all day without asking questions. The main branch downtown was open until 9 on weekdays. It was warm in winter, cool in summer, and had bathrooms where I could wash up. Most importantly, it had books. Endless books. I started reading everything I could get my hands on, but I kept coming back to medicine. Maybe it was because doctors had power. They made life and death decisions, commanded respect, earned good money. Or maybe it was because understanding how bodies work gave me a sense of control in a life where I'd had none. I devoured anatomy textbooks that college students left behind. Gray's Anatomy, Netter's Atlas, massive pharmacology tomes. The words were difficult at first, the concepts complex, but I had nothing but time and motivation. The head librarian, Mrs. Chun, was a small woman with silver-streaked black hair always pulled into a neat bun. She never said anything directly about my situation. Never asked why a teenage kid was spending every free moment in the medical section, why my clothes were worn, why I sometimes smelled like I hadn't showered in days. She just started leaving sandwiches wrapped in napkins where I studied. Turkey and Swiss, ham and cheddar, sometimes just peanut butter and jelly. They'd appear beside my stack of books with a casual precision that suggested she'd forgotten them. Oh my, she'd say if she caught me noticing. I must have left my lunch again. I'm always doing that. Would you mind throwing it away if I don't come back for it? We both knew I wouldn't throw it away. It became our unspoken agreement. She'd forget food. I'd make it disappear. Neither of us acknowledged what was really happening. At 16, I aged out of the Hendersons' care. Patricia tried to find me another placement, but I was done with the system. I lied about my age and got a dishwashing job at a diner called Rosie's, claiming I was 18. The owner, a gruff man named Frank, probably knew I was lying, but needed the help badly enough not to care. You show up on time, work hard, and don't steal, we won't have problems, he said. I showed up early, worked harder than anyone, never took so much as a stale dinner roll without paying. The job paid minimum wage under the table. I saved every penny in a coffee can I kept hidden in my backpack. Slept in a storage unit I rented for $50 a month, surrounded by boxes of other people's abandoned memories. Someone's old furniture, someone else's Christmas decorations, someone's photo albums from a life they'd moved on from. I had a sleeping bag, a battery-powered lamp, and my books. That was enough. Rosie, Frank's wife, started packing me leftovers to take home. Meatloaf and mashed potatoes. Chicken and vegetables. Always enough for 2 meals. Can't let it go to waste, she'd say, but her eyes were kind. People helped in small ways, never making a big deal of it. The gym teacher at school who forgot to lock the locker room, giving me a place to shower. The school counselor who kept a drawer full of toiletries that students could borrow without questions. The lady at the laundromat who'd let me wash my clothes for free during slow hours. Rebecca had stolen my father, but she wasn't stealing my future. That became my mantra. I'd whisper it to myself in the storage unit at night when a loneliness threatened to crush me. I'd repeat it during double shifts at the diner when my feet ached and my hands were raw from hot water and harsh soap. I'd think it every time I saw a father and son together, laughing over some shared joke. She took my father. She wouldn't take anything else. I passed my GED at 17 with perfect scores. The testing center administrator looked at my results with surprise. "Have you thought about college?" she asked. College. It seemed impossible. I was living in a storage unit, working at a diner, barely scraping by. But Mrs. Chun had been leaving college brochures with those sandwiches. Community college. State university. Scholarship information. I applied to the local community college with Mrs. Chen's address as my own. She'd offered without me asking, somehow knowing I'd need it. The application essay asked about challenges I'd overcome. I wrote about surviving homelessness, about learning medicine in library books, about finding family in the kindness of strangers. I didn't mention my father. He didn't deserve to be part of my story anymore. I got in full scholarship because my essay about surviving homelessness made the admissions committee cry. The financial aid officer called Mrs. Chen's house, and she handed me the phone with a smile. "We'd like to offer you a full ride," the voice said. "Tuition, fees, and a stipend for living expenses." I cried in Mrs. Chen's kitchen while she made tea and pretended not to notice. Community college was a revelation. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building. Every A was a brick in the foundation of my future. Every science class brought me closer to medical school. Every scholarship application was another door opening. I transferred to State University after 2 years with a 4.0 GPA. More scholarships. More essays about the homeless kid who refused to quit. I used their pity. I used everything I had. I wasn't proud of it, but I wasn't ashamed either. This was survival. The university had resources I'd never dreamed of. Research opportunities. Mentorship programs. A pre-med advisor who took a special interest in my case. "You have an incredible story," Dr. Martinez told me. "Medical schools love students who've overcome adversity, but you need clinical experience, volunteering, research." I volunteered at the free clinic downtown, shadowed doctors at the county hospital, joined a research lab studying neurodegenerative diseases. I slept 4 hours a night and ran on coffee and determination. Medical school was harder, not academically. I learned to study like my life depended on it because it did. My survival had always been tied to my performance. Failure wasn't an option when you had no safety net. But medical school exposed wounds I tried to bury. The family events were torture. White coat ceremony, where families pinned on your first doctor's coat. Match day, when you found out where you do your residency. Graduation. Everyone else had parents, siblings, grandparents filling the audience. Taking photos. Crying proud tears. Making dinner reservations to celebrate. I had Mrs. Chun, who came to everything with her camera and her kind smile. I had Rosie and Frank from the diner, who closed early to attend my white coat ceremony. I had Dr. Martinez, my undergraduate advisor, who drove 3 hours to watch me graduate medical school. They were my family, the one I'd built from kindness and shared humanity. But explaining why no family came to graduation hurt. Why my emergency contact was a retired librarian. Why I spent holidays volunteering at the hospital instead of going home. "Where's your family?" classmates would ask. They couldn't make it, I'd say, and change the subject. Some people knew parts of my story. Medical school applications required that essay, after all. But I never told them about my father specifically. About being dropped off at shelter on Christmas Eve. About watching him choose his new family over me. That shame was mine alone. I specialized in neurology. Something about the brain fascinated me. Its complexity, its fragility, the way damage to one tiny area could change everything about who a person was. Maybe I was drawn to it because I understood what it meant to be fundamentally altered by trauma. To have your neural pathways rewired by survival. Residency was brutal. 100-hour weeks. Life and death decisions. Patients who reminded me of myself. The vulnerable ones, the ones the system had failed, the ones who'd been abandoned. I was good at my job. Excellent, even. I had a reputation for being brilliant but cold. Dr. Torres doesn't have the best bedside manner, I overheard an attending say once. But he'll figure out what's wrong when nobody else can. They didn't understand that distance was protective. Getting too close to patients, to anyone, meant risking the kind of pain I'd spent years learning to avoid. Then I met Sarah. She was an ER doctor, sharp and funny, and unimpressed by my reputation. We met at a medical conference in Chicago. I was presenting research on early intervention in stroke patients. She asked a question during the Q&A that was so insightful, it made me actually actually pause and reconsider my conclusions. Afterward, she found me at the hotel bar. "Buy you a drink to make up for poking holes in your research," she offered. "My research doesn't have holes," I said. "Everyone's research has holes. The question is whether you're honest enough to acknowledge them." I bought her a drink. We talked until 3 in the morning. She told me about growing up in a big, chaotic family. 3 sisters, 2 brothers, parents who'd been married 40 years. Sunday dinners that required 2 tables. Holidays that were loud and overwhelming and full of love. It sounded like a foreign country to me. "What about your family?" she asked. "I don't have one," I said simply. She waited for more, but I didn't offer it. Most people would have pushed. She just nodded and changed the subject. We dated long distance for a year. She was in Boston. I was finishing my residency in California. We'd video chat between shifts, send ridiculous memes at 3 in the morning, meet up at conferences whenever we could. She was patient with my walls, never pushed too hard. Let me open up in my own time. I told her about the shelter on our 10th date, 6 months in. We were walking along the beach in San Diego, and she'd been talking about her nephew's birthday party. "Do you want kids someday?" she asked casually. "Yes," I said, "and I'll never abandon them." The vehemence in my voice surprised us both. "Michael." So I told her about my father, about Christmas Eve, about the garbage bag and the disconnected phone number and the grocery store encounter, about building myself from nothing. She cried. I didn't. I'd run out of tears for that story years ago. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, holding my hand. "Don't be. It made me who I am." "You made you who you are," she corrected. "He just gave you a harder starting point." We got married 2 years later. Small ceremony. Just her enormous family and my small collection of chosen family. Mrs. Chung cried through the whole thing. Rosie and Frank gave us a set of dishes from the diner. "So you remember where you came from?" Frank said gruffly. Sarah's family embraced me completely. Her mother, Maria, was a force of nature who decided I was her son now, and that was that. Sunday dinners became a regular thing. Holidays were spent in her parents' crowded, noisy house. It was overwhelming at first. All that family, all that love freely given. I kept waiting for conditions for the other shoe to drop, but never did. We had a daughter 3 years into our marriage. Emma, 7 pounds, 2 ounces, with Sarah's eyes and my dark hair. The moment they placed her in my arms, I made her a promise. I will never leave you. I will never make you doubt that you're wanted. I will never, ever throw you away. I'd built everything from nothing. Without him, despite him. I bought a house with a mortgage I was proud to pay. Every month, when I signed that check, I thought about the storage unit, about how far I'd come. I built a successful practice, published research, taught medical students, saved lives. I was Dr. Michael Torres. I had a wife who loved me, a daughter who thought I hung the moon, a chosen family who'd been there when my blood family had. I'd won. I'd survived and thrived and built a life he couldn't touch. 17 years passed. Emma turned 14. I hadn't thought about my father in months. The wound had scarred over, still there, but no longer bleeding. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I usually didn't answer those, but I was between patience and distracted. "Hello, is this Dr. Michael Torres?" "Yes." "Who's calling?" "This is Dr. Patterson at Mercy General Hospital. I'm calling about your father, David Torres. You're listed as his emergency contact." My blood went cold. There must be a mistake. "Are you David Torres' son?" "Biologically, yes, but I'm not his emergency contact. I haven't spoken to him in 17 years. I understand this must be difficult, but he's listed you in his medical records. He's an acute kidney failure, Dr. Torres. Stage 5. We need to discuss treatment options immediately. Discuss them with his wife, Rebecca, or his son, Marcus. Mrs. Torres is here, but we need to speak with you about." I hung up, blocked the number. My hand was shaking. He'd listed me as his emergency contact. After 17 years of silence, after abandoning me at a shelter, after pretending I didn't exist in a grocery store, he put my name down as the person to call in an emergency. The audacity of it made me want to throw my phone across the room. But they kept calling from different lines. The hospital, Rebecca, even a social worker. I blocked them all. Then, 3 days later, Sarah answered my phone while I was in the shower. "Michael, honey," she called. "There's a woman on the phone. She says it's urgent, about your father." I came out, dripping wet, and took the phone. "Dr. Torres, please don't hang up." It was a woman's voice, professional but pleading. "My name is Rebecca Torres. I'm your father's wife. I know who you are. He's dying. His kidneys are failing. He needs a transplant, and you're the only family match. Marcus is too young. He's only 17. And I have diabetes, so I can't donate. Please. I know he hurt you. I know what he did was unforgivable. But please, he's dying." "Good," I said and hung up. Sarah was standing in the doorway, her face pale. She'd heard. "Michael, don't. You should at least hear them out." "Why?" "So he can die with a clear conscience? So Rebecca can feel like she tried everything?" "I don't owe him anything, Sarah. Less than nothing." "I know, but you might owe yourself closure." "I have closure. I closed that door 17 years ago. But Sarah knew me better than I knew myself sometimes. She knew the wound wasn't as healed as I pretended. Just go see him. You don't have to give him anything, but go see him. Decide with all the information. I've already decided. Then it won't hurt to confirm that decision in person. She was right, damn her. As much as I wanted to refuse, part of me needed to see him. Needed to look him in the eye and tell him exactly what I thought of him asking for my help after what he'd done. So I went. I took a day off work, something I never did, and drove to Mercy General. The whole way there, I practiced what I'd say. How I'd tell him that he'd made his choice 17 years ago, and now I was making mine. I walked into that hospital with my white coat on, my credentials displayed. I wanted him to see what I'd become without him, what he'd thrown away. His room was on the 4th floor, room 437. I stood outside for 5 minutes, gathering myself. Then I opened the door. The man in the bed looked nothing like my father. My father had been strong, vital, with dark hair and broad shoulders. This man was gray and shrunken, tubes running from his arms, monitors beeping softly. His skin had that yellowish tint that meant his kidneys weren't filtering toxins anymore. He looked smaller, older, fragile in a way I'd never imagined possible. Rebecca sat in a chair beside the bed. She was older too, her blonde hair showing gray roots, lines around her eyes. She looked up when I entered, and something like hope crossed her face. "Michael," my father whispered. His voice was weak, raspy. "You came." I stood at the foot of his bed, my hands in my pockets, my face carefully neutral. "I came to tell you no. If you enjoyed this story, like and subscribe for more."